Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Kerry Kennedy has stated that the award that Prince Harry and Harry's wife are set to receive on December the 6th at the Nipple of Grope ceremony is for their apparently courageous stance with regard to the structural racism in the royal family. Now, of course, let's make this clear. Those are the words of Kerry Kennedy. Might they have been said by Harry's wife? Quite possibly. It's the kind of deluded nonsense that she could well come up with in terms of making mention of the fact that she had to deal with structural racism. Alternatively, what she has spoken of to other people, perhaps privately, and some of the public observations that she's made, Kerry Kennedy interprets as structural racism. But either way, no actual evidence has been provided of this so-called structural racism. What we've had is a suggestion of racist comment or comments about Archie's skin colour, which, we all know, was actually the simple speculation in the same way as people would say, I wonder if he'll have his father's hair, or will he have that person's nose, and so forth. The comment wasn't made in a racist way, but was simply one of speculation with regard to wondering what the baby's skin colour would have, given that the father is a pasty white dude and the mother is a quarter black. However, of course, as we know, as part of the pity play that occurred at the Oprah Winfrey bombshell interview, that was rolled out and portrayed as something nastier than it actually was. So there's been that comment with regard to racism. There's also, of course, the allegation that Harry's wife made, but this wasn't directed at the royal family, this was about the British media, whereby she said she wouldn't give photographic access to a media that used the N-word in relation to her children, which was an out-and-out lie. As far as I'm aware, there's no other recorded instances of suggesting that she was subjected to racist behaviour within the royal family. Indeed, it all points in the other direction. The fact, notwithstanding undoubtedly some of the material that the royal family would have found about her background and less than savoury behaviours, nothing to do with her race, but simply the way that she's conducted herself, they still welcomed her into the family. The fact that she was given a staff of 14 to help her integrate. The fact that she was granted permissions that other people hadn't, for example, being allowed to go to Sandringham at Christmas, contrary to protocol, even though they weren't married. The fact that she was allowed to wear white, even though it was her second or possibly third wedding. The fact that she was allowed to have a huge veil, again, even though ordinarily that's not something that somebody marrying for the second or third time, depending on which version you want to follow, would be allowed to do. And there were other favours and access granted to her. She was made warmly welcome by all. You'll note, of course, that if the family were racist, would they have admitted her in the first place? No. If they were racist, do you think they'd even countenanced her marrying Harry? No. The fact is, there was no racism that occurred whatsoever, but it's manufactured by her narcissism as part of her defence mechanism, which works like this. If you say no to Harry's wife, and thus threaten her sense of control, her narcissism will invariably ascribe your refusal based upon being a hater, a misogynist, or a racist, and therefore repeatedly plays the race card. The danger of doing this is threefold. First of all, it diminishes the circumstances for people who actually are victims of racial prejudice because they're less likely to be taken seriously as a consequence of the moronic behaviour of Harry's wife. Secondly, it results in people also taking her less seriously if she even had a genuine complaint at some juncture, and thus works against her, the law of collateral consequences. Thirdly, it presents a problem because it creates a view of her that leads to further threats to control. People simply don't believe what she's alleging. They don't accept the allegations that she issues. They don't believe that she's telling the truth. Again, that doesn't matter to her because her narcissism directs her to assert control in the moment. Although she may not have used the phrase structural racism herself, the fact is that if she and Harry accept this award, they are endorsing this description ascribed to them by Kerry Kennedy. But moreover, what on earth is he talking about? Where is the structural racism? It doesn't exist. That would mean that there would be systemic and repeated instances of racist behaviour. But we haven't had any evidence provided of it. Indeed, Harry's wife, given the fact that she believes she can now say what she wants and repeatedly revels in being interviewed and issuing her truth, why do we not have a catalogue of instances of this so-called structural racism? We don't, because they don't exist, and it's not even necessary for her narcissism to conjure them up, because all she does is make the broad, vague allegation of racism, which vagueness is a form of manipulation, alongside false manipulation, a manipulation of false accusation, which then results in that manipulation being used to nullify the threat to control. So quite simply, she can just throw out the fact of, oh, people have been racist to me. And if anyone were to say, oh, give particular examples of that, she'd fudge it. Of course, when she invariably throws this out there, it's done to the likes of Oprah Winfrey. So there is no forensic examination of the allegations, but simply blatant acceptance of the lie. There's no questioning. There's no, when was this said? Who said it by whom? What were the words used? There's no pinning down to particularization, which of course is something that a narcissist such as Harry's wife would revel in, because it suits her purposes in that regard. By accepting this award on the December the 6th, which she's likely to do so, she's endorsing these comments, which of course she asserts control in the moment by the acceptance of the award and lapping up all of the fuel by the flunkies that are there, but it's going to drive an even greater wedge between them and the royal family, and yet she still holds out that her children should have titles, and once again demonstrates the blatant hypocrisy of her behaviours by accepting such an award, or be likely to accept such an award, thus endorsing a false allegation against the royal family, whilst at the same time saying, but I want the titles too. Of course, she doesn't see this as hypocrisy. Her narcissism blinds her to it. Furthermore, of course, Kerry Kennedy talks about their moral courage in standing up to this supposed structural racism. That apparently they went there and said to the institution, these are the things that you're doing wrong, and you ought to change them. It's the first I've heard of that. What evidence is there? Yes, we've heard of Harry's wife railing against instances where people have told her about protocols, where she has lashed out and bullied people. But for her to go in and say, oh, all of these things that you're doing are racist, that's just not happened, nor has she made any mention of that previously. Moral courage. What? By whining all the time, is that moral courage? By playing the victim repeatedly, by asserting control by withdrawal, by going to Canada and then the United States, is that the moral courage? Taking pot shots from over the ocean, is that moral courage? Of course, it is not. And unfortunately, Kerry Kennedy probably has her own axe to grind, and as a consequence of the behaviours of Harry's wife in perpetuating this victim stance and maintaining a view that she has been subjected to racist treatment when there actually isn't any evidence of that, this results in this ridiculous scenario. Of course, Harry's wife will lap this up. It's support for her and fits with her victim narrative. But it'll be interesting to see what the reaction of King Charles may well be, should this award be accepted, and they in effect give endorsement to these remarks. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.